and record. Okay, I think we're okay.
So is your sound up full on your computer, John?
It's 3/4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take it all the way up.
Yep.
All right, so have you got who's recording? You're recording?
I'm recording it.
All right, so it is, I believe, November 9th, right? Planning board meeting to consider Sophia Delaner's application for a new driveway. Present are Bronwyn and Rich and Joanne Hanson. Jay Reichwat is absent this evening on the planning board. We have Claudio Gonzoni, a neighbor with his counsel, Mr. Lynch. We're going to open the application, and our counsel is Ashley is on the computer. So the first thing that we're going to do is make a motion to consider this a type 2 action under SECRA. Which is, this is a residential property and does not require a SECRA process. So I have a motion. And are we all in favor of declaring that this application is a type 2 under SECRA? Yes. Sophia has just handed us and John a site plan table that no one has had an opportunity to review. But the intention for this evening's meeting is to talk about the things that are needed for the site plan, to talk about various engineering issues that are involved in this potential driveway, and to talk about the need to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And to note that the neighbors, both Claudio and the Pomps and other neighbors have raised various issues concerning the application. So we're going to start with a discussion of the site plan table, which is I'm going to turn that over to John. And you've got a copy that you've got. Okay, so you've got one.
Okay, so for the record, Sophia, the real issue we had up until moments ago was that we didn't have a complete site plan table because we have to be able to identify both those areas where your plan conforms with the code and where your plan does not conform with the code. So we'll need a little bit of time to review this, but thank you for at least completing the table and pointing out those things that are changing. I will go down this briefly now. We are aware that lot coverage will be changing because you're adding in additional driveway space.
Sorry, I'm not.
And how is that possible?
The driveway is included completely in the site plan in my lot.
It is now, but it's the existing condition is different from the proposed condition.
No,
No,
no. It's an existing road, it's a continuation of East Side. It's been neglected for I don't know how many years, and I'm just proposing to use it, basically to unite two
But
existing
you
roads.
are taking something that is not currently improved and making impermeable surfaces on the property. So that changes the coverage. That is not improved. That's not an improved road at this point. So this coverage is calculated on how much of the land is covered by driveways, houses, other things. So
Because it sounded for a second that the size of the lot is changed.
no, it's just
we're just
the amount of
talking about
coverage.
how much of the lot gets covered.
Okay. All right, so we have lot coverage, we have a calculation there that we can look at. The driveway grades, you're indicating that the existing driveway is less than 10%, and the proposed driveway will be less than 10%.
And I believe, which I didn't mention, and who's here, Sophia, do you want to mention who's online, your engineer and, your counsel, I believe is off.
1 second, have you, it's extra copy, I think she just submitted that tonight, as I understand.
Correct, sir.
Is there an extra copy if there is, right, if not? This would help me understand better. what's-
There you go.
Thank you very
This
much.
is fair.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Whoops.
I have to log in again.
Well, just tell us.
Okay, it should be my attorney, Bernadette Campbell. It should be my engineer, Steven Lemansky.
Okay,
And it should be the guy who is helping me organize everything, and he is in charge of the project, Tom Lawrence.
Yes, and I can confirm Tom Lawrence is on the call. Sally Sani is on the call. David McFadden is on the Zoom meeting. Bernadette Condon, Ashley Torrey, Stephen Lemensky. They're the people that are on the Zoom meeting.
okay, sorry, I just,
That's okay.
sorry to interrupt there, but I just wanted to make sure that for the record, Sophia's professionals were noted in the record. So,
So continuing down the table, driveway grades, it shows that the existing driveway grade is less than 10%, and you're proposing that the new driveway grades will be less than 10%. Driveway setback adjacent property lines, you're showing that under the code that we require 10 feet between the edges of a driveway and the property lines, and you're showing the proposed condition is 10 feet. Sophia, I may ask you to show that on your site plan table. That's one of the items that we really didn't think was clear on your original table. We understand that the end of Summit Road is 25 feet.
Actually, I'm sorry, it's actually even more. Because I was not aware when I was measuring it, and I told someone else, a professional, to measure it. Excuse me, I was measuring the boulders on the edge. Turns out to be boulders are also on my territory, so the actual size is like 27, 28 feet wide.
Well, the maps that we have in the village office show 25 feet. And the problem we've been having with that is that the minimum width of a driveway is 8 feet. And if you're required to have 10 feet on either side, you require at least 28 feet to be compliant with the village code. You have to be 10 feet from the easterly property line and
Yes,
10 feet from the westerly property line.
right, I
And
understand.
your plan clearly shows you're staying 10 feet from the easterly property line. It shows your driveway not being 8 feet, but being as much as, I believe, 12 feet.
Yeah, I actually brought it up. That's the very end.
And that's up to
That's
you.
not an issue.
But then you're not giving us a dimension on the western side of what the distance is between your property line, the driveway and the neighboring property line.
Okay, so it's the very, very edge of, at the very, very end, when the driveway is supposed to, new driveway is supposed to plug into the East Summit Road.
Yes.
I am actually proposing to put cattle grade, which is going to be not a part of the driveway, but a part of the deer fence. And the deer fence is actually coming next spring, sometime next spring. It's a matter of budget, and it's also a matter that the driveway has to be in place.
but it doesn't address the basic physical question of how wide is that space? Your plan is not showing it at 28 feet. I don't know if your engineer is in a position to comment on that, but it's gotta be 28 feet. It doesn't, how it's fenced or how it's accessed is irrelevant. It's how physically wide is it?
Right, but if actually for the deer fence, it requires not 10 feet, but only 2 or 5. I don't remember exactly now. I was looking through the village code.
But
and
let's just start with the
Yeah.
driveway. The driveway is 8 feet wide at a minimum.
Yeah.
And you need 10 feet on either side.
Right, but if the, oh my God, okay, cattle grade, if it is 12 feet wide and 18 feet deep, it means that the driveway is set back 18 feet. So it's more than sufficient for 10 feet to be in.
No, I think it's width, not depth. You know, so when you're driving up, let's pretend here's your driveway, you gotta have 10 feet over here and 10 feet here.
Let's do it on the actual side. So we are talking,
Mrs. Delano, if I can, I understand, the purpose of a cattle rate
Yeah.
or cattle guard.
Yeah.
For protection of vegetation and prohibit
Yeah,
deer.
yeah.
But it's actually being used as part of the driveway. And that's why we need clarity on the setbacks. I understand the purpose and in my opinion, the cattle guard is really not a fence the way it's defined in the village code. The purpose of the cattle guard is at the mouth of your driveway, which would be used to come and go from your property. So it's part of the driveway and has to show compliance with the code relative to driveways. That's all. I understand what you're saying, but it's really not a fence. And actually, if it's a fence, it really doesn't comply with the code either, because a fence should be set back at least 2 feet off the road and 5 feet off a property line.
We could do that. Set it off 2 feet off the property line, that's not. a problem.
Mhm. And you can do that, but
Yeah.
I could also assure you that without clarity, the Board of Zoning Appeals is probably not going to give you a decision that you'd like. Because it still does not comply with the code. You're not showing us the required setbacks, whether it's a fence or whether it's a driveway. We need some clarity, and I think the document you gave us tonight helps in some regards. But it still doesn't answer the question about the distance between the edges of the driveway and the neighboring property line. In one regard, it does, on the eastern side, but on the western side, you just have a mark, PK nail in red bold text.
Yeah.
So there's gotta be 10 feet here, 10 feet here.
Right. But again, if this is a part of a deer fence and it's set back 2 feet, I'm in compliance.
I don't, it's not depth, it's width. We have to have 28 feet from here, wherever your property line is, to here.
But here it's actually would be more, okay, look, so if this is 25, right? Minus 10 leaves 15. If I do it 8, it leaves 7 on this side.
Yes, and you're
If
required.
I
to
do
have-
it 12, it leaves 3 on this side.
Mrs. Delano, will you be driving over the cattle grade?
Yeah.
It's a driveway. Sorry. You need 10 feet on each side of the mouth of the driveway. Mhm.
So as I indicated, the list of various things that are on this evening's agenda, that would be one of them. Is that unless you can demonstrate with your plan that it's 28 feet across there, it will need to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
But I actually think that it is. I don't know why the
Well-
plan is showing 25.
You are submitting the plan. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's what I'm telling you, that when I was measuring it till the boulders.
yeah, but
Boulders are about this big.
But the boulders don't make up the setback, make up the property line.
Yes,
Whether
they
those
do.
boulders are on your,
So if the boulders are closer to the pumps, so
Physical-
it means I'm staying closer to the pumps, another 2 feet or 3 feet, and then it leaves 28
listen,
minus,
physically, the
Yeah.
boulders may establish, an obstacle, but they really don't establish a legal property boundary. The boulders, whether they're on,
they are on my land.
okay,
The previous board actually showed they are on my land.
you have submitted, doesn't that plan indicate not 28 feet?
Well, it actually doesn't indicate anything on the total. This particular plan, I don't think, let me get my glasses. I don't think. Can I look at the table, please?
This is-
On the village plans, it's 25 feet.
that's what the end of the driveway shows, is the end of the roadway shows 25 feet. And I think
But that's not a village plan, that's my plans.
no, but the village documents that I have, the tax map show that the formal end of East Summit Road is 25 feet.
There is nothing about it here.
If I may, can anyone hear me?
Yes.
So what
Oh.
we're trying to indicate here is either you submit a plan that indicates that it's 28 feet, or your application will need to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals to discuss the fact that it is less than 28 feet with them.
And we're not saying they're not going to grant you a variance, but without the clarity, I can't approve it. The planning board cannot approve it. And if you do need a variance, the BZA is going to want a number so they can go through their review process and give you a variance for 3 feet if that's what they choose to do. Sorry.
I mean, you might want to get a survey to measure the mouth of the driveway at the very end. So we have 25 feet.
So
Actually, surveyor did, and he put up little flags on the sticks,
then he can,
and
then
somebody actually removed them.
however, the surveyor can indicate to us, I mean, that's the point of a survey plan. He can indicate what is the width there, if particularly if he's been there previously.
And the safest thing for your surveyor to do is when he does mark something, to mark it with a 5-foot offset or a 10-foot offset that's well onto your property. Okay,
John, he did,
okay. Right.
and the mark was removed.
Well, you can let us know when it happens. John can come and take a look and you can take photos. But we need to establish the physical conditions at the beginning of the property. Because the information that has been provided to us at this point does not indicate 28 feet. If it's not 28, I don't want to be repetitious, but that requires going before the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay, so I actually have a very serious issue. Because the winter is coming. The present driveway is not drivable. And I've been stranded for the last 3 winters in my home for several weeks. Every time it snows and the ice appears on the road.
I appreciate that, Sophia, and we're about to now go into the various engineering issues that are involved in this driveway. Those issues have to be dealt with. I don't know, is there a cut and fill analysis on here? John, I don't see one, road cut. The proposed,
They show the changing topography, but not necessarily a cut and fill analysis. I just noticed Bernadette Condon, Mrs. Delanor's attorney, has raised her hand.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
You
go
want-
ahead.
Yeah, actually, I had raised it earlier, but
Mrs. Condon,
yeah, can you hear me? Hello?
can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
She has sound.
I do. Hello? Can anyone hear me?
Probably are talking about-
Bernadette,
I can hear you.
Bernadette, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I don't know who cannot hear me.
We can hear you now. Go speak.
Okay.
Please speak.
Thank you. My hand was actually raised earlier with respect with the driveway and the cattle crate being part of the fence. I understand that the portion of the cattle crate that is at abuts East Summit Road is being considered by the board and Mr. Ledwith as part of the driveway, so that in the event that there is not enough space to allow for 10 feet on either side, will need to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals. So I understand that issue now. That's why my hand was raised, but I will have some other comments as we move on.
Okay. So. Sorry, the feedback situation. John, do you want to then go into the engineering issues, which I think have been raised by both our council, Jay Reichgott, who's not here this evening, but we shared his comments with you, Sophia, and your council, and I assume onto your engineer, to talk about some of the various engineering issues that are involved. John, do you want to start that conversation?
Certainly, some of these may be repetitive, but just for the record, both Ashley Torrey, attorney to the planning board, and Jay Reichgott, planning board member who could not be here tonight because he's attending a meeting in town, submitted at least several punch list items each. Most of them relate to the site plan table not being complete. If it was, these questions probably would not come up. But there were also questions about the number of dry wells that seem to be required for some reason.
They are.
We understand. We just, don't know why so many are required. Is there that much runoff that's expected? I mean, the entire area is natural. And I understand.
Yeah, I actually, if I may, because I also have an engineering degree. I don't think there are, because actually there is a rock under already existing driveway. And the existing driveway surface, whatever it is, it's actually somewhere on this report, I think, on this report. And it's only like a couple of feet deep. So the runoff, whatever is existing now, is basically going to be exactly the same. But just in case, I'm going to create this catch basins and run the pipes under the driveway to make sure that it's constricted only to one area. And by the way, the entire pump property is like a really steep decline and it's completely forested property. I don't think anybody is going to be walking there.
Well, we'll need proof as to where it's going to be directed.
Well,
We don't need it, we don't need it
Photos.
We don't need it necessarily now, but
Yeah.
we will need proof on where that water is getting directed. And I should also caution you about directing too much water in any one location, because then it
That's
adds.
why maybe he did three. I'm seeing on the plan, trench drain, and another one. Yes, sir, trench drain.
Okay.
So effectively, what Don is leading to is that your engineer is going to need to establish with our engineer that the existing, you're not increasing the existing conditions of runoff. And that's, I mean, he's put the drains in, but John, do you want to elaborate on what he needs to do to show the calculations that relate to that?
Yeah, he has to prove to us that the amount of surface that you're improving, that water is not going to be shed off the property, and we manage on the property. But I assume the
Stephen
amount of
is actually right here. So, do you mind asking him that question?
Stephen Lemansky.
Yep.
I think he can hear us. Can you hear us, Stephen, talking about the drainage?
I can.
Stephen?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir.
I calculated for a 4-inch rainfall and just initially put some dry wells in, although I realize we've got some possible issues with depth to rock. However, all of our rainfall that's falling on the impervious surface will go into subsurface drainage containers or maybe culvert, fingers, depending on whether or not we don't have enough depth to go to full dry wells.
Okay, all right. I think you're going in the right direction. Our engineer will look for no increase of water flow off the property.
Correct.
At the end of the day.
Correct.
So, all right, you're familiar with that then.
Correct.
Thank you.
So
Thank
can
you.
we then move to, since we've got you on audio here, the cut and fill analysis, because there's not a clear pathway up from the road all the way up to the property. There's some walls and steps that are in the way. There's some terrain that we don't know whether it's dirt or rock. Have you done the cut and fill analysis of what kind of terrain alteration will be needed to put the driveway into place?
I think you're asking me that question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so right now, I think it's all pervious and natural drainage. I think the only thing we have to look at is if we put a curb or we don't put a curb. And I like to either roll the pavement or put some type of a curb. I think the only thing we have to look at is whether or not the curbs themselves will redirect some water, although more than 90% of the water will just continue straight down.
I was actually moving on beyond the water issue to just see how do you get physically up there when there appears to be a number of both man-made and natural objects in the way.
Oh, are you saying the people who are going to actually build the driveway, their access?
Driveway into place.
I'm sorry, I think I jumped on top of you. Are you saying, how are we gonna actually accomplish putting the driveway in with things that are in the way?
Yes, I mean, how much terrain are you gonna have to either fill in or remove, and what are the calculations? of that?
We're trying to follow, I think we're trying to follow the terrain. I can do a cut and fill if that's what you require. And I think I might have to get a surveyor in there to give me some more points in order to do that, but I can do a cut and fill, but just looking at the topography, I don't think we're going to be bringing in or taking any off. I think we're just going to be reshaping it and trying to hold within that 10%.
If I can, Stephen, the
Sure.
area of concern that I'm familiar with is the area near the masonry stone wall that's highlighted on the plan. I don't know if that's
That's an existing wall.
yeah, there's two walls there. I don't know if it's the wall to the north or the wall to the south. But, that's
Further out,
that's,
more to the north, because
okay.
you allowed us to remove the other one. You actually
Well-
allowed us to remove both of them,
I,
but I'm going to keep one.
I didn't give any permission to remove the
Yes,
wall.
you did. It was in the presence of Bernadette. We had a
Mm,
conversation.
no.
This is the board that makes decisions about what happens with the properties, so that is not John's ability to make waiver on conditions on the property. So, I mean, I know that it as to try and move this process forward, John met with you and your counsel on the property, but he is not in a position to make decisions for this board. So I just want to make that
Yeah.
very clear.
I
So
guess.
let's,
But I think
come
that
back.
is the majority of the area that I think needs to be either flattened or added to.
Okay.
And-
so
and we
let's
need
see,
some
the
type of
second-
analysis
The
of that.
second wall is right here. It's a very short wall, which is right here. And it would be useful if we could eliminate it. It means that we need to remove a little bit less here. And the area in here raised about probably like this. If I'm standing on the driveway, so the area that needs to be removed, I'm thinking, what is it, like 4 feet, 4.5 feet?
Well, if those topography lines matched up to what you were doing, we'd be able to tell roughly what the amount of disturbance would be.
Right, look, it's right in here, 795, 790. Or 800 and 795, so we are talking about.
do you have a
five.
copy of that, John, or do you want to move
Five.
it down?
I'm following you.
He has the same.
But in this area, I mean, there's a wall and there's steps. I mean, are the
There are no steps,
where are the steps?
no steps.
I don't believe there were physically steps. It kind of inclines gradually as you go through the twist of those two
Yeah.
walls.
Okay,
So the only place where it's going to be filled in, it's somewhere in here. Because it's a little bit steeper and I would like to go a little
but
bit smoother.
is there naturally occurring width right here or there?
No, this area needs to be removed.
Exactly, so that's what I'm
Create- Yeah.
driving at with your engineer. That is that rock, is it dirt? The
It's,
board doesn't know, and so your engineer needs to say, hey, what are we removing? Are we removing rock, dirt, and how much?
It's a mix of dirt and rock.
Right, so that's what your engineer has to tell us. How much terrain alteration are you doing?
Well, if the driveway is 12 feet, right? So we need to remove, if we are not,
No, I appreciate
Yeah,
that,
I didn't
but
even-
as we sit here, we do
Yeah.
not know whether that's granite or dirt. And that's what we're looking to your engineer to tell us. Obviously, if it's dirt, that's a simpler matter to try and do the terrain alteration. That's solid rock. We're dealing with a very different situation.
Mrs. Delano, looking at the boring details, there's a
Mhm.
boring that was done at location B2, which appears to be near the area of the stone walls. And at B2, it shows 10 inches of soil, sandy
wait a
ground.
second, I actually need to look at this map probably. Okay, B2.
Yep, it shows, I think, 10
Yeah.
inches of soil, sandy ground, another 5 inches of decomposed rock, all the way down another 2 inches. So there is rock in the area, and we just need a cut and fill analysis on how much of that is getting removed. And like you said, it has to be at least as wide as the driveway that you're proposing, which looks to be, I guess, 12 feet throughout. Looks a little wider looks a little wider during that turn, but
It should not be, it should be the same.
Yeah,
Not
so,
on, not on this map, it may be just sort of like the way it was drawn.
right, so understanding what's going with that, and then you've indicated that potentially you're gonna need for grade purposes. to
Right,
fill it.
just a little
Right.
bit in here,
Yeah, so that's
but
what
it's
your,
not much.
that's what your engineer needs to tell us.
Okay, I understand that.
And the rest is fine, because this is an existing road, and this is an existing road. And there is like a small passage between them. So if I'm allowed to remove one of the walls, which is actually crumbling all the time, right? Then I already have like 3 or 4 feet that I already have here empty. Open.
Right, I mean, I appreciate that, as I say, this is essentially asking, you know, the engineer to indicate what kind of terrain alteration is gonna take place. So Stephen, you're in a position to do that? Or-
Yes, yeah, I can take care. I understand what you need.
And Stephen too, I did just want to point out that because the property is in the Ridgeline Precipice overlay district, there are specific regulations there in section 100-13 of the code. And it discusses requirements like tailoring to the natural terrain and preserving natural features and things. So if you could be mindful of those when you're doing your analysis. to-
100-13.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So were there other, and we just, Ashley, do you want to mention that we just need a limits to disturbance, which is going to be similar to what you have with the driveway here, but just having your engineer indicate how much of the property it's going to be, the driveway itself probably, and
Well, it's actually already in the table.
is it?
The number is in the table. I've seen it today.
No, but it's a physical
No.
indicator on the map of, you know, if you are removing terrain in this area, that the engineer just needs to show physically on the map what's being altered. So there's gonna be some terrain that's gonna be around the driveway where you're doing the work.
Nothing,
Well, I mean,
nothing, because that's already pretty wide existing road, and this is also pretty wide existing road.
right,
So the only work that is going to be done here, excuse me, and this is probably like maybe maximum 10 feet, maybe even 8 feet wide.
so Stephen, do you appreciate, we're asking for a limits of disturbance to be shown on the map?
I do.
Okay. And John, what were Ashley and John's, Jay's other comments or your comments?
there was a question about site distances. It's required, I believe, and I have to look at the table to show what the site distances are. I understand this is a dead end, but we should have some type of number on what the site distances are. We did receive a letter from a downhill neighbor that was concerned about the site distances between I'll go through the letters in a moment, between his house and his driveway coming around that hairpin turn. The site distances there are very, very short, if non-existent, and he was concerned about any additional traffic would be
Let me
cause
tell
for
you
concern.
how-
You don't have to answer the question now, and it might be better that you do it in writing in the future. I'm just trying to go through the.
I will give you pictures on my computer.
Well,
Answer that
you can
question,
show the board if you like,
John.
but if I can, I'll briefly read Mr. Van Berg's letter. He's fine with the proposal, but if it is approved, I would request the mirror to see around the blind corner as East Summit Road turns to the left up the hill adjacent to our garage. If the purpose of the new driveway is to ease what seems to be a needed delivery vehicles, I worry about trucks barreling down the road into a blind turn.
Who is,
This is
Who is
Mr. Van Berg.
who is Mr. Van?
Van Berg, if you go up East Summit Road, it's the first house on the right-hand side. It's on the point.
No, I actually never seen that letter. I'm looking for the pumps letter.
Okay, well,
Pumps, that,
well,
for some reason I cannot see it.
the pumps didn't bring up site distances.
That's why I'm wondering, because I never received the letter.
And that's why, that's why I had to go back in my emails today, because some of these comments were received some time ago. And I was gonna note them all this evening. All the recent letters, you've received.
Here we are.
Um,
So this is actually not answering that question. But it might be answering the question in response.
Well, if you want, Mr. Pomp had four concerns. One was the setback from his property. The second one was possibly headlights from vehicles going to your property, piercing into his property and into his living area. He was concerned about the steepness of the property where the driveway would be located, that you're only 10 feet away from a pretty precipitous drop off. And he was also concerned if the driveway was proposed to be asphalt, that he was concerned about water runoff onto his property. They're the four concerns that he had noted.
I think we already addressed the water runoff, right?
It
Yes, no?
appears it's not addressed fully, but it appears your engineer knows what we need.
Yeah, okay, so basically, the first one was about the headlights. So let me show you. This is picture number one, taken of the proposed driveway, right? Right at this,
Had possibly worked, so I never could-
yeah, 1 second, yeah, right at this point. Here it
That's
is.
fine, thank you.
Do you see Pump's house anywhere? Vegetation blocks everything, and please keep in mind, when I was taking the pictures. Purposefully, I was taking them at this height. The headlights are somewhere here. So the chances of that being visible is even less than it is here. Then I took a picture somewhere over there. And it is this picture. Can you see the house?
What are you saying, Claudia?
It's that the pumps complain about my headlights when I go around my turn. That they make it to their bedrooms and living room. They ask me to dim the headlights when I go around that turn.
And here is
Just pointing out that the pumps are already complaining with.
right, but maybe from somewhere over there. I'm showing from somewhere here. And look at all this vegetation, because there is not so much vegetation on the actual East Summit Road, which is also actually also very steep. And here is the third picture, which is taken somewhere here. And here it is. And you cannot even see their house anywhere. Because of the dense vegetation, and it's basically the leaves are practically already down. This is how it is. It's a very dense bush and very dense streets and everything else. Dense mature trees.
But as, I mean, this kind of shows the width issue, but, is coming down past this point here, and then you're gonna make the turn.
No. Let me go to the picture number one, and this is actually taken right before the turn. The turn is going to be somewhere here, because this area still continues. It is this part of my property, right? So that still continues. So let's say that the driveway is going to end up somewhere here. You cannot really see. The wall is not there. But it's going to turn somewhere.
So can you go back to the picture we were just looking at, though?
This one,
Three, yeah.
number three.
Where is that shot taken from? Is this the
Right here.
That's what I'm saying. So that's the.
From here, looking this way.
I'm just trying to point out that that kind of shows the width problem. You know, you need 8 feet for your driveway, you need.
Oh, no, believe me, it's pretty wide.
Okay.
It is pretty wide. I don't know
So
why
it's-
it's not
so
like
this is-
because those are the buildings that I can see.
Yeah. So
They're
this,
still on my property.
so this is down at the beginning and you're coming down here and then you're making the turn.
And then making the,
Okay.
so they should not see the headlights or anything else. And by the way, for the record, bumps walking on my property was trespass because nobody ever warned me that somebody is coming.
They did
I'm
not
sorry.
indicate to us that they've been on your property, so.
As they didn't indicate. So
Well,
that's trespass.
Correct, and you should, if you have somebody who's trespassing on your property, you should call the village police.
I didn't see them. I actually knew that they were on my property by the letters that I got from you. With complaints about them. Martin actually is stating that he was walking there and measuring the distance with his feet.
I didn't see them either, so I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
But
No,
nobody,
I
but
just-
nobody has any rights regardless of the public notices
Yeah.
to trespass on your
That's
property.
what I meant.
Sorry.
Okay, so, and obviously Claudio is here and he has concerns, so, it's,
My only suggestion is that your volunteers, time is valuable. I understand that the applicant has to come back with more data. We would be wouldn't have, I don't think any action is being taken tonight. To look at the complete picture and then make the comments that we don't want to take your time as valuable. So if the intention of the board is to have the applicant fill out all the details, the cut and fill, zero net runoff, and then that plan is submitted. If it's submitted before the next meeting, so we can look at it, I think it would be more productive use of your time, but audio's happy to make any comments if you wanted to do it now and then later on too.
okay, well, I think those,
Stop me coming out.
yeah, so
That's a big two comments,
Okay.
if you don't mind. The first one is, we're not worried about, our good neighbor Sophia. We're worried about the people that come after her. And the people that come after them. And secondly, we are very happy to, have been talking with Sophia and with Conrad Roncati, get together and to find a solution that's workable among all three parties for the current driveway. The current driveway is the part that that belongs to Roncati and myself. It's not in good condition, but it's not in bad condition. The part that is in worse condition is the part that belongs 100% to Sophia. It has very big potholes. If you walk, Mr. Ledwith, if you walk the driveway, you will notice. And we've approached Sophia, so we can do a tar and chip. We'd rather not do asphalt because it's against the BAR guidelines.
understood.
But we're very willing to work with her and provide smooth access to our house on the current driveway.
So that is beyond the scope of the planning board, that is among the three
I
parties.
understand.
Obviously, it's an existing driveway. I think it could be a more cost-effective solution.
It is unfortunately it's not. Because I already was neighbors and at the very beginning, when I was approaching them personally, without the lawyers, both of them, Roncati went into complete radio silence,
But
Claudia been avoided.
let's talk about where we are today.
Yes.
So he's just indicated that both neighbors are prepared to talk about that. I mean, that is a level entrance. I would think it would be far easier for trucks and other things. This is quite steep. Your engineer will be able to indicate whether it conforms with the 10% slope, but I think everyone recognizes that you come down and then the property, not yours, but the pumps and the additional property is pretty steep. So obviously that's a private party matter. You can pursue that, you cannot pursue that. Our role here is, okay, well then our role is to review what you are submitting to us. So we've indicated the various engineering things. I think your engineer understands what he needs to do. And the next step for you is to either through a surveyor or an engineer, demonstrate that the proper distance exists as is, or if it doesn't, then you will need to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals to ask for a waiver. And is that clear? Mrs. It's Condon, right?
Miss Condon, Bernadette.
Bernadette. Just want to make sure that
Bernadette, are the comments from the planning board chair clear?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, that's clear to me. And
Okay.
just so I'm clear, in the event that the situation presents where there is not, the width is not wide enough to allow for 10 feet on either side, we can go directly to the Board of Zoning Appeals, correct? And that before,
What I need is site plan that reflects exactly what the dimensions are.
right, no, understood, but next step then would be to go, because there's concern here with the winter approaching that this project get underway because of, the current driveway and its condition is impassable sometimes in the winter because you can't get plows to get down low enough and sheets of ice form. So, there's a real concern and a real urgency to get this done as soon as possible. So I just want to, make sure that once we have the proper,
I might as well bring up the topic now. The BZA meets the first week of each month. The application and paperwork that they require, that I require, has to be submitted 30 days before the meeting. So there's still going to be some delay before you go before the Board of Zoning Appeals. And in all likelihood, it will probably not happen until the first week of January. You may request a meeting earlier, but given the holiday schedule and the fact that you've already passed the December deadline date, which would have been the first week of November, there's still going to be some delay. I might as well just tell you that now.
okay.
Okay. Also, Stephen Leminski has raised his hand. Stephen, do you want to speak? I'm sorry, it's been a little while.
Please, I was just wondering which engineer is going to review this, and I'm asking so that if I do have a question, I can get it answered by the person who's going to be reviewing the drawing, so I don't have to disconnect.
I think everything should funnel through me, and I will do my best to get answers to you as quick as I can.
Okay,
But I think it starts with an accurate, complete site plan.
okay.
Rich, I think I've been doing all the talking, but Rich and Bronwyn, do you have other questions or
Well,
comments?
Before Claudia spoke of this story, if winter's coming, Claudia doesn't have any objections for you to clean up your own driveway, at least for the winter. Isn't that an option?
Yeah, it's not, because it actually needs to be completely resurfaced. Because actually the potholes that Claudia is referring to, I've been filling them up at least twice a year. And the fill in lasts like about 3 weeks, maximum 4, and then it comes up. So the only solution is to completely resurface it. But at the very beginning, I was actually thinking about taking upon myself the cost for all the repairs for the driveway. At the moment, I just, some time ago, I decided, no, I'm not going to. Because the neighbors should be responsible for maintaining their own properties. And also there is an issue of dead trees on both sides,
Well,
which are falling down.
all I'm
Which
saying
are
is,
also
it's a
dangerous.
lot cheaper to do
It's
that.
not, actually it's not. Actually, it is not. Because the existing driveway is much longer. And if both neighbors are demanding guarantee, it means constant repairs. And in 5 years, the entire surface needs to be resurfaced again. And I am not willing to go into this expense. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's just,
Thank you.
No, it's out there. And if we're gonna lay all the cards out there, the bar is, the standard is tar and chip, and that pathway, the neighbor, to your left. Remind me the gentleman's name, of the driveway, anyway,
Current or proposed?
no, the existing,
Mr. Pomp?
no.
No.
Conrad.
Conrad Road.
Yeah, he does
That's
not
out.
want,
Asphalt.
asphalt driveway,
Yeah.
so, okay, I think we have covered all of the various issues, tried to lay it out for you, what is needed from an engineering point of view. I think Stephen understands that, and can work together with the village's engineering firm, and then I guess the question is whether you can submit a request to the BZA to be heard on an earlier time frame.
Well, I think their first issue is to submit, a site plan table that
They
reflects the
have to
plan.
have all of this
I can't do
engineering
it.
issue.
But John
Well-
has all the documents.
Well, but I need a site plan table and a site plan that shows the distances on each side of the driveway.
Okay,
I think,
I'm sure we could provide it.
Thank you.
So basic question is, okay, I'm not a well person. And I live alone. In case I need an emergency assistance. And the driveway is the present current driveway, is covered by the house.
The village is not responsible for your driveway. I'm sorry.
I understand. That's why I felt it's not my driveway, it's a common driveway.
And we've indicated we work with her to get it repaired.
Actually, no, that's not what I heard when I was talking, not even.
I'm not here to
loud.
argue with you, I'm just telling the board what we've already said. I'm not here to argue.
and again, what's in front of us is if you do something new, and
Yes.
so, obviously. That's for you, your council, there's an offer that's been made to discuss the existing driveway, so I think,
I'm sorry, let me finish.
okay. that's-
No, we've engaged an engineer, in the search for the truth and have professionals on the same page. Our engineer will contact John. We would ask that the applicant's engineer, when they make a submission, just share it with our engineer so we can, look at things properly, expeditiously. And so that when we come back before you, if that's the next situation, that you'll have, the advantage of it. Because just, for example, tonight, we literally just got the
Well, and
calculations.
So did we.
This meeting was to, as Sophia said, winter is coming on. We're trying to lay out all the things for you, for your council, for your engineer that are required to move this forward. So that's what the purpose of this evening's meeting is.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think we have covered the waterfront. And with that, the minutes are gonna need to go for Jay. So may I have, Ashley, is there anything you wanna add before we conclude?
No, nothing else for me.
Okay.
I'm good, thank you.
Just with your counsel, I respectfully disagree on her type 2, but I'll deal with council directly. I'm not gonna waste your time on that.
Okay.
Bernadette, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't have anything else to add. Thank you.
Okay,
So with that, we have a motion to conclude the meeting. Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Okay,
guys, thank you so much for being there for me.
Hey, good night all.
Right.
sorry for the technical difficulties.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
No. No, actually, it is okay. Because cloud was very good, it's like. That's the first one. He comes out and goes this way. Yeah, no, yeah, and I can do it. Road is. And the slot is driveways. So then sort of like a big village. You